All right, I'm starting this and I'm going to surprise Jim.
What's your question, buddy?
Hey, you're live.
Yeah, what's up with this?
Did I trick you? I took a screenshot of you yesterday. Hold on. So I'm already recording, by the way. Just figured do this one thing. Meanwhile, hold on. I'm gonna enter your. Oh, there we are.
You're freaking me out. You're freaking me out that you're in my house now.
Actually, I think as Lisa joins, or maybe for our next speakers, we should give them your background as well.
Yep, sure. Before Lisa joins.
Yeah, maybe for the next speakers, maybe we'll prep them with your background as well. So we're recording, by the way.
Okay, we're recording. Okay.
I've been recording before you even joined. I saw your request, so I put it up. So anyway, just real quick, a friend of mine, I sent him this, a buddy of mine from high school. He's like, well, I know who the hell you are, but who the hell is Jim? Right? Like, so we kind of in our episode 0 forgot our own introductions. And so I think we should get the most unproduced version of this produced. So I'm Eugene, co-host, serial intern entrepreneur in digital health.
Yeah, I'm Jim Joyce. I am also a recovering pharmaceutical executive, serial entrepreneur, semi-professional comedian on very kind of unproduced events, at digital healthcare events. And I am CEO of a company called Health Beacon.
So, I want to maybe go through some reviews. So first of all, this is great news. For our episode 0, we got 158 views. People have spent 13 hours combined watching us, which is only an average of 5 minutes out of the 30. And I think 2 hours of that 13 was Matthew Holt viewing this over and over again and picking at it. But some rave reviews. Jim, what did your wife call it?
Yeah, I think meticulously unproduced was one of the first critic reviews. I think what was the other? What was Bolty Boys?
So Justin Massa said, critics be damned. It's fantastic in every way. So we did get I put us in a 18 plus. I thought we were going to curse a lot and things like that, but we actually behaved. So I put us in 18 plus or adult. And so Vishal, for example, said, I tried and got carded, Vishal Gulati.
Right.
Matthew Holt, initial comment was 5 minutes in and still waiting for it to get funny. But then later said that unless you're drunk or the host are drunk or the guests are drunk, it may not be as funny as we think we are. Dan Kendall, love it. I will tune in every time. And then afterwards, he sent me a nice little video that I shared with you also, urging us on, even though we said podcasts are being listened to less, which by the way, I ran a little poll. Probably about 25 people responded. 89% did say they listen to less podcasts during, we can't say this, right? So introduction, if you're tuning in the first time, we're trying not to talk about COVID, pandemic, Corona. So all those words where, we are born during the pandemic, but there you go. Anytime we say it, that will be it. So Lisa is knocking on the door, but let's get her in. Let's get her in.
Let's get her in. We got to talk about the money.
Let's talk about the money. Lisa, we're already recording. Lisa, as you're dialing in here, zooming in.
I think we almost got her. Hey.
Oh.
How's it going?
We've been already recording, but we love the background.
Thank you.
Eugene's freaking me out. He looks like he's in my house.
I know, it kind of does look like you guys are together. People are going to talk.
Yeah. And what's this scenario? What's the house? What's going on behind you?
That's the Simpsons living room. Come on, man. Don't you watch
Yeah.
pop culture?
No, it's just my 50-year-old eyes. I can't focus it on the.
I heard about your 50-year-old shenanigans. I hear you're expecting.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm expecting.
Where's your wife been? I thought she'd been at home.
Yeah, no. We're moving from living room to kitchen to.
Exactly.
We're getting used to each other. So first thing, before we get into this is episode 1. You're our first guest. Before we get into the money, that's what we thought. What can make this conversation a little bit more interesting? We were talking about the money. Is what's the story in California right now? How are you holding up? Are you traveling? Are you going to coffee shops?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, California's pretty locked down. Which we were the first state I think to lock down in the U.S.
Yeah.
And had a much easier time of it compared to some other states considering the population size. LA's taken a much heavier hit than San Francisco area. There's been pretty aggressive attempts at testing in key markets to understand the impact. They found that somewhere between 3 and 4% of Los Angeles residents probably have had exposure, which is quite a lot more. That's like 2 to 400,000 people, quite a lot more than people knew. So there's kind of a whole lot of studying going on and all that. We're supposed to get more news today about how our lockdown proceeds or doesn't proceed, but
yeah,
I got to tell you, I'm not all excited to take chances.
Yeah. And what's your day like? Zoom calls?
You're looking at it, my friend. Calls. This is my day.
Do you change the Simpson locations in the different rooms in Simpson's house?
No, I don't. But I have other backgrounds. Okay. I mean, I can. This is really the one I like the most.
Right.
That's gonna be my body after this. I'm working on it. So,
all right.
Please, maybe just very quickly introduce yourself, right? I mean, you're the money goddess, as Jim called it, but because we realized in our episode 0 that we didn't even introduce ourselves. We just kind of got into it.
You just kind of launched in. I know. I didn't know who the hell you guys were when I started listening to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm Lisa Suennen. Some people know me as Venture Valkyrie. I work at Manat Phelps, doing venture investing and consulting, primarily in healthcare. And then I've been a venture capitalist for like 22 years now, or something like that. And I was an entrepreneur before that. So I feel
you started at kind of age 10 with your dad.
Yeah.
So maybe before we dive into the real topic, I wanted to pick and Jim tried to defend you on the last one.
Did he now?
You've been a big critic of the wellness model, right? And I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper on that, because the question is, I mean, wellness industry with all of its stuff is like multi-trillion industry. Is your comment on the wellness is for the healthcare? So maybe dig in a little bit on your criticism of the wellness industry, and that probably will be a good segue.
I don't have a criticism of the wellness industry at all, actually. I mean, I think, first of all, I think it's good because we need to be healthier. And second of all, it's obviously massive. So, my criticism is that when wellness companies try to masquerade as healthcare companies, it doesn't go well from a funding standpoint. It certainly doesn't go well from a consumer pay standpoint. And while employers are a big buyer of wellness products, they do it, frankly, I think, and I think most of them would tell you in a closed room, this is true, they do it for employee satisfaction, reasons, not for improving health or reducing cost reasons. So, I think we get a little mixed up in our parlance between what's healthcare and what's wellness, and that's what my complaint is about.
That's your complaint. You don't have anything against healthy people.
Only you. No, I don't have anything against healthy people.
I need
to the extent that they reduce the revenues of the companies in which I invest.
Right. Like, stressed out entrepreneurs picturing wellness companies as medical companies.
I know, really healthy. I love it.
different.
You know, the DJ world, as far as like mixing stuff in, I feel like Zoom needs to introduce a little, like, you know, what's the appropriate background image that you can just swap to. So like I'd be doing, you know, weights, for example.
Right.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, they need a little AI, don't you think? You can have a little AI, you know, kind of predictive background analytics.
AI will
totally.
solve it all.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so the purpose of the podcast here is to be therapeutic. This is just a chance for us to kind of hang out with our friends for a half hour and really talk to our additional 1 or 2 fans out there. But
we had 159, Jim. 159 views.
I didn't know you guys had that many kids. That's awesome.
We're crushing it. We're crushing it. We're crushing it. So okay, so we thought money would make it interesting as we kind of build up our unproduced empire. So the question is, Eugene, you want to hit this one first? Or you want to go right to the
No,
the real
just right
expert?
to the question. We honestly, I was kind of looking up, just trying to find what actually went in the last 30 days, but I couldn't find
the last 30 days in data is not available yet. You can only see Q1. I actually published on my blog on Venture Valkyrie today a big article about this very topic.
Okay,
so,
great.
So we're trying to understand what's actually, is there money flowing? I'm sure there is some.
Yes.
And you know, on one side, everybody's saying, you know, VCs are shutting down, right? On the other side, there's VCs that are open for business.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've seen tremendous changes, at least in US, but beyond and globally, around everything from telemedicine, et cetera. So I think we're just trying to dig in with you.
Yeah.
What's flowing, what's not flowing, what's really happening?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little hard to tell what's happening in April. If you look at Q1, the numbers were really strong, investment in digital health. I mean, like crazy high, highest Q1 ever in history. On track, you know, if you believe in annualization curves, to be higher than any year previously.
Okay.
And interestingly, already by the time Q3 or Q1 ended, it was really the focus of that money was shifted from what it had been the prior year. So heavy towards telemedicine, like 2 to 3 times what it had been in prior year. And in the same quarter in the prior year, heavy towards clinical decision making and things, you know, that can be utilized. So it's basically stuff that helps you with the COVID response. So
you got to hold it up, Jim.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure.
No, so we forgot to warn you. We're trying not to say the word COVID, pandemic, or corona. And
do I have to drink? I have iced tea.
You got to drink.
Okay,
you got to drink.
I think that would be good. I think you guys should, you know, make a drinking game out of this. I mean, what the hell?
That's what we're kind of
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I think in Q2 we will see a slowdown. I mean, that's what I think. So a couple different things. On the one hand, and this is exactly what the blog post is about, the COVID, sorry, I blew it again. The current plague has resulted in adoption of digital health at a speed and scale that nobody ever could make it happen before. I mean, like it took a bat, you know, to make this happen. And that's really interesting, number one. Number two, that doesn't necessarily mean we'll see more investment. I mean, because I think Q2 will be about retrenching I'm working with a lot of venture funds in my consulting practice to help them understand all the US federal stimulus and things like that and what's going to happen to their companies. And there's a lot of people whose companies are struggling hard. So the VCs who have large healthcare portfolios or any kind of portfolios are going to be turning inward for a little while to help their portfolio companies survive. And if you've got any kind of healthcare company, aside from telemedicine, you know, your revenues are probably down. You know, nobody's going to work, nobody's using your stuff, and there are no patients outside of that which shall remain unspoken. So, I mean, like in the US, we've seen something like somewhere between 30 and 40% reduction in people presenting for heart attacks in the hospital. Like, where the hell are those people? You know?
Where are they? They're hiding.
Unfortunately, it's terrible. You know, I mean, it's really crazy. So I think as this quarter rolls out, we'll see a lot of VCs focusing internally. But we've also, you know, for everybody who raised mega funds last year, they got to deploy them. And this is going to be like the best time ever. Prices are going to come down. You know, things that really should have been products, not companies, will probably run out of money and have to get acquired, and that could be done pretty cheaply in some cases if they're good.
But let's talk so valuation right now. So you kind of like if you get the deals done, like I just saw someone sent me a note that said 60% of the investors think that the deals will be done at a 20%, a 5 to 20% discount in valuation or something, or more than a 20% discount. And then the other kind of a slight discount, was like, so it was like 60% think it's going to be a significant discount.
I think it'll be significant. Well, I don't know if it's a discount. I think it's like right pricing, I mean, some of the pricing has been ridiculous.
We've been inflated. Yeah. And we all, the three of us definitely had these discussions as well, whether it was Dublin or,
nuts, Right. So I think it'll get right-sized. Valuations will get right-sized, and that's going to hurt a lot of investors and a lot of their investors, right? I mean, I think the question I have is whether we'll see a giant retrenchment among corporate venture capitalists. Will they pull out? Because that's what often happens when the market turns around, when there's a recession, which we haven't got declared a recession yet. But, in 2008,
or are they more,
went away.
I was hearing the opposite argument, that the corporate companies that are in the health or pharmaceutical space, like their fundamental business models are still solid, in a pandemic world.
I think it depends on who you're talking about.
Yeah.
You just said pandemic, by the way, so now you have to drink.
Good call, Lisa. You picked up quick.
I think that if you're a pharmaceutical company, that's probably true. Doesn't change your model much. I think if you're a hospital system, and you haven't had any patients in your hospital for 2 months now, or 6 weeks,
you are elective paying patients.
Hurt. I mean, most of the U.S. hospitals, it's different in Europe than it is in the U.S., obviously, but in the U.S., like hospitals are actually laying off staff and cutting physician salaries. I mean, so will they take money and put it in venture? I don't know.
You don't have to get like that, like the impact to innovation, so right now, people can't interact with each other other than through Zoom, and or through whatever video conference. So there will be very little appetite to fund something nascent for some period of time. Like that.
I think it's tough to fund entrepreneurs you don't know when you've never met them in person.
Yeah, interesting.
Part of the connect. I mean, if we all believe, which I do to a certain extent, that the most important thing is the people. Yeah, it's certainly one of the top 2 most important things. Then if you can't actually experience the people in person, that's kind of weird, And
it also,
is. I mean, you can't. Go ahead, Jim.
No, I say anyone looking at the deals, like I was talking to some of our friends, and they're just trying to get a handle on things for 2 months or something, like even if they had an appetite, they're just trying to get a handle.
I think that's right. I mean, I don't think this quarter is going to be very fulsome in investing in any sector.
Especially, I think, early stage, right? Because I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation. I mean, last, episode 0, we kind of
fallen way off even in the first quarter.
Yeah.
So, which also speaks to what happens the rest of the year, right? I mean, if seed stage deals go away, then the pipeline for A and B deals goes, down a lot. And again, I feel terrible about it because, like, frankly, there's a lot of stuff that,
Do all digital healthcare companies? I know what your blog is going to be like in 30 days. Right now that it won't be like that because I said it, but is it's going to be like if I see another C19 company, that wasn't called that. If I see another C19 company telling me how they're tackling the plague, that's going to be the next blog, right? Like everyone's going to be talking about their relevance.
My last blog or 2 ago, I wrote about the new business ideas that I thought needed to be funded as a result of this, like 6-foot hoop skirts and giant plastic hamster bubbles for people and things like that,
But it is interesting because literally I think every single digital health company has a potential solution or something related, right?
They're trying to anyway.
And I think the sustainability and actually I'd love to even talk to some entrepreneurs that are saying, well, you know what, that's a temporary, because we are going to get past this, right? And
I've seen a lot of companies that have sort of twisted themselves into knots to try to respond.
Yeah.
You gotta though, right?
Some of those things make some sense, but many of them just are like, yikes, you're going to use up all your resources, your precious resources, to do that. And then you're going to have to untwist yourself back to normal at some point.
But everything's shifted. Like, I feel like just everything has shifted so fast. Like you said, the pace of adoption, if you can position as to solving the problem, is like so accelerated.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of move with the times, right? Like now it's the biggest health crisis in the world.
Yeah. Part of it is about getting funding from all the different sources of funding in the US, and maybe there's the same in Europe, just from all the states and governments and US federal and, all sorts of branches of this and that, and entities and foundations have put forth funding for anything that really solves problems. And so some of it is a bit of a masquerade ball to come up with ways of getting at the funding. Yeah. But even those that are very sincere, I think it's very challenging. And, even the bigger companies are struggling to prove to the FDA and others that what they've got is valuable yet. It takes time.
And what technically happens to these funds where, maybe, so say you have a fund that is dependent on a commitment, that's dependent on a commitment to a company that's been wiped out, like an airline industry invested in a digital health fund. What technically happens now to those funds? Do they have to shut down? Do they, what technically pain do they go through?
You mean the funds at corporate entities that don't have money?
Yes, or let's say I've raised a fund and I'm contingent on a call from an LP that can't meet the call.
Well, it's kind of a two-sided problem. Number one, you can't make investments if you don't have money. So, there's that. And the other problem is you have to decide whether you want to sue your LP for a breach. And sometimes your agreements with your LPs specify in advance what happens in case there's a breach of payment. And usually they get, somewhat wiped out. But it doesn't change the fact that you don't have the money to invest.
Right.
So it's a really tough situation. And I think, that's why I think the corporate venture world will contract greatly, because a lot of these organizations that have been springing up over the last, say 8 or 9 years, while there's been tons of money floating around, they're not going to have a stomach for that kind of investment at this moment in time.
And Lisa, maybe within that corporate venturing world, do you think it will differ? So for, let's say, insurers versus pharma versus, to your point, the hospital systems, right?
Yeah.
I think there will be.
I think there will be some differentiation. I think pharma will continue. I think it may actually amplify pharma's interest in digital health for real. Move from the experimental phase to the actionable phase. I think med tech is very hard to say. It probably depends on what you do in med tech, because some of the players, haven't been able to get their products used for a while because all voluntary surgeries in the US have pretty much stopped, or elective surgery, or quasi-elective surgeries. Even things that aren't that elective have stopped. And so there's a lot of,
there's no new patients, like if you're required to initiate on a visit right now, there's no new patients rolling into the,
it's really tough.
Yeah. Rolling into that. And actually I think with pharma, it's like, how do they redeploy all their, their workforces and their sales forces? And it's existential for pharma. So the money's flowing.
What's funny to me is how fast people have figured out how to get around their own rules when they had to.
Right.
The privacy issues in Zoom and all the rest, and people are like, screw it, we're just doing it because you got.
We're just doing it.
We suspended all our regulatory everything around telemedicine and everything else, interoperability, you name it here.
Right.
So I'm gonna be the ball breaker here, because we also got a lot.
That's gonna hurt one of you two. It's not gonna hurt me. Go for
it.
She's got a ball breaker behind her with the photo and the.
No, the ball breaker is more on the timing. So we got feedback that 30 minutes or over 30 minutes is way too much, and we're approaching that 20-minute mark. So, I think any other, and I realized, because Jim's wife called this meticulously unproduced, and I realized I've been like trying to watch the time and look at my little 2 sentences of notes. And I realized, holy crap, this is getting produced. So I'm going to stop. So maybe with that, and Jim, you don't even know this, I asked Lisa to think about, in closing, of one short joke. Because remember, we want maybe every guest to give a little bit of a short joke at the end.
Okay. I have a really short one, and I have a medium one.
Okay. Whichever's funnier.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think in honor of the fact that you have little kids, I will go with the shorter one. What's the difference between broccoli and a booger?
I don't know. What's the difference between broccoli and a booger?
Kids won't eat the broccoli.
Luckily, my kids are over that age already, but
I'll save my next joke for my next visit with you guys.
Awesome. Well,
No, yeah,
thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. I don't get a joke back. I mean, that's lame. Come on, man.
Yeah, I know. You know, I only have one. I famously only
He
have
only
one.
has one.
I've heard that one. Yes, I know.
But wait, we kind of crack them in the middle, right? So as host, we get to not do the full final joke and put attention on you.
I don't really have any. We don't really have any obligations, really. We don't have to prepare. We don't really have to. Zoom takes care of everything. We don't even have to be that funny.
Mission accomplished,
guys.
But we did get a logo, and we realized that it's so unproduced that we couldn't even fit in the right window. So we'll fix that next time.
Got to create your own background for your podcast with your logo.
Exactly.
We'll figure it out.